Hey, it is Zennial Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about how to farm the Rift Beasts faster. So in a recent video I addressed one of the biggest complaints that I've been hearing, which is that it takes too long to farm Rift Beasts. Now, while I disagree with this statement, and you can see that video where I explain why in the link above, I do believe that we always want to take advantage of min-maxing as much as possible. In that same video, I mentioned I had been hearing that there were some ways to accelerate Rift Beast farming. Spoiler alert, the team behind me is not one of those ways, but it is a relatively common, relatively free-to-play team that is something like what a lot of people may be running. I wanted to do one run with this team and let you guys see how long it takes so we have a good point of reference. Now, while this team is running, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing and maybe what we're not going to be doing depending on what you've read in Reddit or heard in your guilds. So, the first thing I had heard is that if you have fewer monsters, the boss spends less time in groggy state, thereby making the runs faster. We tested this on stream. By the way, I'll put a link to that stream where I did all of the testing, so I'm not going to go in as much detail today, but we tested this on stream and it is true. For each less monster you have, the boss takes 6 less hits in groggy state. So, if we know that the boss is gonna take, or rather, if your team is gonna do fewer hits while the boss is in groggy state, then the natural thought process here is to run less monsters. However, there is an issue with that, which is that when you have fewer monsters, the boss takes more turns out of groggy state, and his animations are stupidly slow. One boss animation can easily offset the 6 hits that you save while the boss is in groggy state. So, I've come up with a few different teams. Most of these are pretty free-to-play friendly. You guys did see the light robo in the background right there. I don't think the light robo is actually necessary, and as a matter of fact, the first time I am timing this particular version of team is on stream right now. So our target goal here would be somewhere around a minute 5, a minute 6. If we go over that, then the light robo actually slows the run down. But what the light robo would do is he would help out the people who may have light robo but don't have the same rune quality that I'm using on this team. But there you go, guys. Actually, the time was a minute 4, so the light robo did not slow us down. That's kind of what I thought. He kept us at right about the same. So even though we were running 6 monsters there, we did not get any slower than we would have with 5. Why is that? Well, it's because of what the light robo does. He suicides. So I've actually got the light robo on triple fight. Now you can see I've also got the light robo on the front line. And we did test this. If he suicides while the boss is in groggy state, you wind up taking 1 extra hit, but that's it. So instead of hitting the boss 26 times, now we're going to hit the boss 27 times. But I've got him on triple fight, which benefits the damage of all my team. And then when my other frontline monster, in this case Rauk, does get chained, the light robo is going to give me that self-destruct damage, a little bit of fluff damage that just helps to make sure I put the boss in groggy state before it takes a turn. So let's take a quick look at the runes and what makes this team work, and then I'll show you a couple of other variations, but I know the runes is what everybody wants to see. So to start off with, all of these monsters have defense break and almost all of them are in bio, but the one that acts first, which is the Wahi, she is in rage. The only reason she's in rage, there's 2 reasons actually. First reason she's in rage is because her skill 2 does not count as an attack against the boss in groggy state. So everything we're doing here is trying to get as many attacks to happen as fast as possible while doing as much damage to the boss outside of groggy state. We're looking for monsters with fast animations, and we're just allowing the damage to take care of itself in groggy state based on the fact that we have tons of defense breakers and they're all in YOLO damage sets. So we don't want the Wahi to cycle herself because we don't want her to take more S2s and, basically burn more turns. The other reason she's in rage is because this is a monster I use in solo R5. I didn't want to build a second Wahi. So you'll notice that she's actually a little bit tankier. She's a lot tankier, really, than the other monsters. In solo R5, she only needed 58 crit rate, so I just boosted her build to 100 crit rate so that it's good for basically all of the Rift Beasts except for Water, of course. Now, technically the Rauk should be acting behind the Wahi. I haven't retuned him yet. He would be better behind her. Alright, I'm not even going to cut that part. Okay, it would be better if he acted behind her, but For right now, you can see the build. This is a build I'm testing for Spiritual Realm right now, so that's why he's a little bit faster. He has to get in front of that boss's speed, so most likely I'll speed up the Wahi. But it's basically just a violent build with YOLO damage and 100 crit rate, and that's what all of these builds are going to be. The Logan build, same thing. Bio build, YOLO damage, 100 crit rate. And then the Lucas build, same thing, except not 100 crit rate because he gets a 30% crit rate boost on his passive. The Lucas actually should be 70 crit rate if you use him in other dungeons. However, right now he's just built for the Dark Rift Beast, so 55 crit rate is enough in Dark. And then we've got the Water Dhalsim. Now, one note about this. I did not have a Water Poison Master built. When I looked at the animations in the Transmog menu, they looked kind of slow. So I don't know if the Water Poison Master is going to be a good alternative to the Water Dhalsim. If the Water Poison Master is not, then we still have a different attack leader skill with the Lucas. And another option would be Chris. Now, this is an LD4. Chris's animations also are slow. So if you don't have Chris, or if those slow animations don't work for you, then the last option would be Ryan. Now, I don't have Ryan built right now, so I can't show you the team. But one thing you'll notice is that we're rocking a lot of Neostone agents here. So why are we rocking all these Neostone agents? It's because they self-cycle into additional turns, which allows them to do a crap ton of damage to the boss outside of Groggy State. Like you can see, we just basically knocked the boss into Groggy State in 2-3 hits right there. Those hits are not timed. So the faster we can knock the boss into Groggy State and the faster we can kill the boss outside of Groggy State, the faster our overall run is going to be. So these monsters all basically cycle, or at least 3 of these monsters, the Dhalsim and both of the Neostone agents, they cycle themselves to take additional turns, allowing them to do additional damage. That's also why everything here is built on Vio. The more turns we can take outside of Groggy State, the slower the average time is going to be. Now, obviously, violent procs are not a guarantee, unless you're facing a monster on siege defense, and then they're super guaranteed. But most of the time, violent procs are not guaranteed, but we're talking about now, and there you go, that was a minute flat right there, guys. So that gives you an example. I paused it late, but it was a minute flat. So compare that to the light robo version, which was about a minute 4, minute 5. There's a little bit of variation, but in both cases, we're a solid 12, 13 seconds faster than what is more of a more standard team. And then while we finish discussing the reasons for the strategy, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like with a 4-monster team so you have some comparison. But basically, we are looking for monsters that take as many turns as possible with as fast of animations as possible, and then we're using Violent to help enable them to take more turns. So remember, Lucas self-cycles, so a single Violent proc enables him to take 2 more turns after that. And while he's only going to proc 22% of the time, if you're farming this dungeon heavily, he's going to take thousands and thousands of turns over tens and tens of thousands of runs. And so he's going to get enough procs that it's just going to lower the average time. So violent runes are better here. Now, that brings us to the question of, do you get better drops with a higher score? The honest answer is I don't know. Rift Beasts, before they drop gems, had been modified to give you better drops with higher scores. However, we never really knew that scale. We never knew if it peaked off at a certain point. And there you go. So that's a minute 2. So that's going to, oops, I cleared it, but that was a minute 2. So that's going to show you what this does by comparison. We are not any faster with 4 monsters than with 5. But we are a little bit riskier because you can get fails in these types of builds with only 4 monsters. If the wrong monster gets chained or doesn't proc, then we can wind up with a fail. And then we'll do one more run here with 6 monsters, but using the same kind of concept of self-cycling so you can get a comparison. So returning to the question of do you get better drops with higher scores, the honest answer is I don't know if anybody's really going to know until Swore Farm tracks that data. You would have to literally run like a high score team and a mid score team and a low score team like 500 runs at a time and record it all to figure it out. You're talking days and days of work. So right now, I don't know, but I do believe that previously the rates kind of scaled over 5 million and then they tapered down as you were getting closer to 10 million. So with this team that I'm running right now, which does have very high rune quality, I'm averaging 7-8 million. And if I was worried about that additional score, then I would probably change the Ralk for a Crow. Now keep in mind that Crow has a much slower animation than Ralk, but he does still have a team up mechanic and he gives us a brand. He still has a skill 1 defense break. So If you're struggling to get over that 5 million point and you think your drops are low, you can always swap a crow into this team and see if that makes a difference. So you guys can see right now in the background, the 6 monster team is running much, much slower. This is basically right at 2 seconds faster than that initial team that I ran with just random monsters thrown in. Now, obviously, this is one run at a time. And so this is not truly giving you an example of like what an average of 10 would be. Unfortunately, the game doesn't time it for us. That's why we're running a timer. But it does give you a pretty good idea that we can shave off 10 to 15 seconds by dropping one monster and going into straight YOLO high damage builds, making a point of using monsters that can heavily damage the boss outside of Groggy State, making sure that we're using monsters that don't do a lot of things that don't count. Nice double negative right there. But in other words, using Mav will help you get a much higher score because he cools everybody down. But his skill 2 does not count towards the boss in Groggy State, right? So if you put in a Mav and you run him on auto, then you're taking extra turns in Groggy State, which defeats the purpose of trying to make these runs faster. Now, last thing I want to talk about in this video is the actual placement of the monsters, because this does seem to make a little bit of a difference. So in the Dark Rift team that I am running, Lucas needs to go in the back. Now, the natural instinct for me is the fact that Lucas, because he gets his shield, would be a great frontline tank monster. But what happens is when Lucas gets chained, you can actually fail because he's by far your biggest damage dealer in the Rift Beast. Also, Wahi needs to go in the back. Again, counterintuitive because she's built tankier than any other monster here, but that's for solo R5. But I need that attack buff to come out as frequently as possible in order to accelerate the runs and get the boss into Groggy State or kill the boss faster. So these two monsters need to be backline. Now, as far as what goes frontline, I don't know that there's a significant difference between any of these three. I will also mention that for those of you who can't match the rune quality, because again, I know this is very high rune quality. I don't know if it's overkilling or not. This is just what I put on the monsters. I haven't tested to the floor. But if you can't match the rune quality and you're struggling to kill the boss, then choose which monsters you want to put on the front line and scale up their defense. So these bosses, the Rift Beasts, have always been punished heavily by high defense frontline monsters, punished more heavily by defense than by HP. So get a lot more defense through subs, give up a little bit of damage. Your run will be slightly slower if you can't YOLO straight into the boss, but it will still be faster than the 6 monster team you were running before, because in that case you were still taking, the boss was still taking a bunch of extra turns. So in this YOLO team, the more damage you have, the less turns the boss takes outside of Groggy State, the faster it is overall because of his slow animations. And I will mention, this team should actually perform even better on Light Beast than it does on Dark Beast, because the whole point of Light Beast is to use monsters that do fewer attacks to break his shield faster, and then he doesn't chain you, so you're never losing a monster, so you're always attacking with 5. I didn't set the timer up, but you can see that we cleared really easily. So yeah, this team should absolutely dominate in Light Beast. Now again, if you're looking at scores, my Lucas is doing a lot less damage here because for one thing, he's 8 crit rate short, and for another thing, he doesn't have that 1.5 multiplier that you get going into the Dark Beast. So if you are, again, worried about scores, then just change the Crow out for a Rauk. There's not a ton of debuffs, so the Rauk's not going to scale a lot, but he'll scale enough to do, big hits, 1.2, 1.5 million, depending on your rune quality. He'll add the brand, so that's going to add a lot more. And then he'll also probably do a lot more damage to the boss outside of Groggy State than the Rauk is doing, unless the Rauk, goes John Cena on you. But anyway, that's it, guys. That's it for today's video. I will probably update once I've worked out teams for some of the other dungeons. I'll probably do one more updated video, but I wanted to share this with you guys now. I know a lot of people were stressed about not being able to farm gems this quickly. These runs are really fast, and then being able to do focused, dedicated gem grinding as opposed to getting 1 gem every 3,400 or so R5 runs is pretty amazing. So, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoy your gem farming. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, drop a comment for the algorithm, and I'll see you guys in the next video.